Let's do a bit of a more chill video today. I want to review the 3CE brushes. These ones that recently came, not even recently, it was like a few weeks ago. Actually more, I thought maybe like a month ago. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I've been testing them every day since I got them, and I have a good idea about how I feel about these. I'll go through each brush, talk about the functions and what you can use them for, whether I like them or not. And at the end, for those of you that are wondering which ones you want to get, if you want to get these brushes, which ones I recommend and which ones I think are worth like passing out on, skipping out on. There are 5 face brushes, one of which is double-ended, and a lot of the eye brushes are double-ended. Again, they're all synthetic. The quality of the brushes, I have to say, is probably, these are probably some of my favorite because they're so soft. We all know Real Techniques, I can't find one right now, but you know, Real Techniques. These Real Techniques brushes are known for being really soft, but I have to say these are probably softer. They're probably more in line with the Real Techniques new blue, whatever line feels like. Probably even softer, to be honest. So they're definitely on par with some of my natural hair brushes, which are very expensive, and so I like treasure these things. But because they are synthetic, they are much more affordable. The price range is about $15 to $25-ish. So I definitely think you're getting your money's worth. First up, we've got the foundation brush. Should we do this in order of number? How about we do that, something more professional? So there's a big powder brush. I do like the length of this, by the way. Sometimes when you're like holding a mirror in front of you, like honey, I've got this foundation brush. Don't ask me why I have this brush, but I have this brush. When you're working on your makeup, especially when you're switching sides, you might hit whatever you're holding in your hand. So I do appreciate the length. It's not too long and it's not too short. A good in between. It makes it great for travel as well, so you don't have to carry, like, if you have a pouch, sometimes some of them are so long that it's hard to fit in some pouches. But this is the powder brush, and it's kind of comes to a taper a little bit. You know, you can kind of get in here, but I do tend to use a separate brush for setting the under eye. The size is large enough so that you can quickly set your whole face without it taking forever. And I do like the amount of flimsiness that I'm using the word flimsy a lot in this video to kind of describe density and flimsiness. Hopefully you can see it. Picks up just enough powder to apply without over applying. It's also great for if you bake. I don't really bake anymore, but if I use like a powder puff to set my whole face, it's really great for swiping off the excess powder. And you can kind of also feel parts of your skin where it drags a little bit, where it's not fully set, so you know where to add a little bit more powder. I think as like an overall powder brush for setting your makeup, this is a fantastic brush. Oh, and also if you don't feel like using a separate brush for setting your under eyes, you can kind of hold it like this and do this motion on your eyebrows as well. The foundation brush. Now, this is one of those like dense, not kabuki because the shape is not really kabuki. You know those like toothbrush brushes? It's kind of like that, but it's more long. It's not a complete like oval or like circle. Now, I was kind of on the fence about this brush because I never really find myself reaching for it. It applies to liquid foundation fine. But the thing is, it's a very, very dense brush. It's really dense. Like, it doesn't have much give to it. And because they're so short, I find that when I'm using this brush, I tend to do more tapping and kind of like this motion more rather than like full sweeping. You can, but what I notice is that you have to put like a very little pressure on the brush while you're swiping. Otherwise, you're pretty much lifting the brush. What I wanted to use this for was like I'll put a foundation all over, right? And then I'll put my liquid concealer in the center here and use it to kind of like blend it. But the strength and pressure that this brush applies tended to like lift off the foundation underneath so I can see my skin again. So I found myself having to just kind of pat, and I mean, for that, it's fine. If you kind of just like tap your concealer or your foundation in and do kind of like this motion, you'll be fine and it blends it perfectly. But what I found that it's amazing for is actually cream foundation. I bought the whole line of, you know, new 3C base products, the stick foundation, their new concealers, and their new shading and highlighting palettes, strobing palettes. That'll be a whole different video, but I have to say they're like A+. So my 3C is always like killing it with products. So the reason I love this for cream is that these sorts of brushes in general are fantastic for covering pores because they kind of push the foundation into the pores and kind of smooth everything out, but it takes off any excess, and that's pretty much what this does. It doesn't really take away from the cream foundation. It just leaves enough on the skin to where you're left with coverage, but you're not like having to go back and apply more and more because you feel like you're like just lifting off the foundation while you're blending. So for cream foundation, specifically this one, A+. And for when I'm traveling, I do carry this with me just in case for my, my liquid foundations, or I like to use this around here to kind of get rid of any excess foundation because I tend to get all creasy around here. Then we have F03, the multi-brush. Just like the name says, it's a multi-brush. It's a really great shape, and I'm going to talk more about why I think this is really the only powder brush, like highlight, contour, blush brush, whatever, worth getting in this collection. Just like the powder brush, it's there's a lot of give to it, so it doesn't really move the skin around, and that's what's important with like blush, highlight, whatever, because like that foundation, if it's too dense, it's gonna like pull off your foundation, but this is really, it gives a really soft, light touch to the skin. So really, you can use this for pretty much anything. Use it to set under the eyes or around your face. But again, because of the smaller size, it is gonna take longer. But if you like more glowy looks, for me, whenever I do like a glowy look, I really only set certain parts of the face, like center of the forehead, or the forehead in general, around the nose and under the eyes, and that's pretty much it. So this is good for that. You can use this for highlighter. Literally, it's the perfect size for getting like the cheek highlight, on the nose, wherever, blush, perfect size. Because all my favorite blush brushes are pretty much this size. Contour, yeah, you know, on the side here, up there, on the jawline. It's a really good shape for both applying it, but then also using to blend it out. So, I mean, it's a multi-brush. Next up, we have the F04 blush brush. I have to say, I was like really confused by this brush. When I went to the store, I just asked her to give me one of every brush. I didn't like look at the packaging or anything. I kind of just opened all the brushes. And it wasn't until later I realized this is a blush brush. And it looks like a kabuki foundation brush, doesn't it? And really, you can use it for that. I actually would choose this over this to put on like liquid foundation, but it's a blush brush. And I was watching the tutorials on their website. She's actually applying it the way that I found it best applies blush. It's more, I mean, even though it has a bit of give to it, I feel like it's too dense for applying blush like this. I feel like it would just rip off the foundation from the skin. If I use this, I tend to use it with my Take a Layer thing. I've been like using this every day for my blush recently. This is Diotima, and I kind of dip in here and I just pat. It's really just the center of the brush. It's so flat, and of course my skin is like curved, so, or my face is curved, so the center really is really the part that's applying it. And I guess the bristles around it are blending it out, because whenever I use it, I do find that it does give that sort of soft haze effect. So it's not like applying too much blush. So although it's a really strangely shaped blush brush, it's good. I just don't really reach for it that often. I tend to use other brushes, to be honest, for blush. So the times that I do use this, I don't have a bad experience. I was just completely like, this is a really confusing thing for me. Like I always look at this brush thinking like, why did they even put this in the collection? But and then the last face brush is the blush and contour brush. This is the double-ended one, or the only double-ended face brush. One end is kind of like a cross between the foundation brush, like the shape, the fluffiness and density of the multi-brush. I guess this is supposed to be like the blush brush. It's a very small shape, so you can get like a precise application of blush, or I use it for highlighter sometimes. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. I mean, the bristles are just as soft as like the other ones. The contour brush is pretty much the same thing, except it's more at an angle. It is quite fat. This one is more on like the fluffy side, so it's good for applying. I use this for my contour when I contour my cheeks or my jaw. It's great for applying. I kind of pat it in, but then it's fluffy enough to where I can use it to blend it out. So good for applying and also blending at the same time. If I'm being very lazy to pick up my nose contour brush, I can use this side as well to kind of blend it out, but that gives me like a sort of very soft kind of nose contour. So yeah, it's cute. I really just use this brush for the contour side though. I never really reach for this because again, I have this one. I have a whole lot of blush brushes, to be honest. Now, quick note before I move on to the eye brushes. Again, all of these brushes are synthetic, so they work. The face brushes, they work fantastic for cream products. Like I was saying, like the foundation brush is really great for cream. But when it comes to powder, like with a powder brush, it's fine because you're just picking up setting powder and applying it to your face. But it's like a different story when it comes to powder blushes, powder highlighters, powder contour. The reason I love animal hair brushes so much is that because the quality of the brush is so good, it makes even like the worst eyeshadows apply really well. Maybe not like maybe the BT21 makeup, but it does make working with most makeup really easy. I can pretty much get a look out of anything, but because these and the eye brushes are synthetic, they're not always gonna pick up the best for every like powder product out there. The way synthetic bristles work is that they're technically made of, I guess, plastic, and so the surface of the bristles is smooth. Animal brushes, the surface of the bristles, like the surface, but like the cuticle of the bristles are kind of porous, and they're kind of imperfect, so they can pick up a lot of extra like product. With these, they're like smooth bristles, so a lot of time I kind of have to dip back and forth with it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but in that case, you're gonna have to rely on better makeup products at that point, more pigmented products. It depends on like your preferences. Maybe you don't like super like harsh pigmented things on the skin. You like to build things up, which is fine, but that's definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, so I guess I missed a face brush. This is the concealer brush. This brush is labeled CO1, so I guess it's concealer one, and there's only one of this in the collection. It's a double-ended concealer brush. One end is kind of flat concealer brush, and the other end is more of like a point detail brush. So great for pinpoint concealing, which I need to do. Speaking of which, I need to touch up this concealer because it's like rubbing oil. You guys know, for me, when it comes to concealer brushes, I like ones that are really flat. This is one of my favorite ones. It's the Picasso 195. Very, very flat. And it's actually, it's pointed, so it gets in there really easily. This is actually also pointed to an extent. It comes up to a slight point right here. So it's really good for getting, like with the corrector that they have, for covering just the dark circle. It's like the perfect size, right up into the inner corner, so that it like really eliminates that darkness. I like thin ones because they eat up less of the product. When it's a really thick foundation or concealer flat brush, the more thick it is this way, the more the product gets pushed up in there, and it holds a lot of the product without letting it go. So I have to like dip back into the product again. But with this, I kind of just dip into the concealer and I kind of flatten it out and even it on the brush, and I can just pat it in, getting the right amount, and then just blend it out with my finger or whatever. It's a really great shade for getting around the nose as well. So this is a really good concealer brush. The other end I like to use for more detail, like if I have a small blemish that I need to cover, I'll use it to get just a little bit of concealer on that area, and use the other end to pat it out. I find that using this side to blend it out rather than my finger, and usually there'd be a concealer on there already, so I don't feel like I'm blending away the concealer. So this is a pretty good concealer brush. Now moving on to the eye brushes. There are 4, they're all double-ended. The number 1 multi-blending brush, one end is a blending brush, and the other end is an angled, it's kind of like this brush, but for eyes it's like an angled sort of fluffy brush. It's more on the fluffy side. It's not super like sharp and angular. In fact, it's a good in between. It's not too sharp, but it's fluffy enough to where you can use it to both apply, maybe like in the outer corner, but also blend it out a little bit. The actual blending brush that's in this collection for the eyes is probably one of the worst blending brushes I've ever used. I hate it, and to be honest, there's like 2 things that this eye collection is missing, is a good blending brush and a good all over eyeshadow brush. I will show you my favorites for those in a bit. Actually, let me show you the blending brush that I like. I like a blending brush like this. One that's quite, not so fat, but like enough to where it actually blends out and softens the area that I'm blending. This, looking at it, you might not think that they're that different, but I noticed that the radius of actual, like, where it's touching on the skin is like a very small point. So it makes, if I were to use it to blend out maybe like a crease color, it would take forever. And there's just not enough, I find that there's just not enough bristles in there. You don't want your blending brush to be super, super dense. You also don't need it to be like 3 hairs. It feels like 3 hairs, to be honest, when I'm using it. So that's why I really just use this to blend out my brush. It makes it super easy and quick and blends out like super quick. This one I'm kind of just like, I don't even bother using it because I don't like it. On the tutorial video they had, they also use it for like the nose. Don't really use it for the nose. If I were to use anything for the nose coloring, it would probably be this, but I feel like it would be too much because it would pack too much color and pigment on the nose. But this one, I almost find myself using the side of the brush to blend things out because I just don't feel like this part really, but anyway, I don't really care for this brush overall. If I use this brush, it's for this, and I usually tend to use it on like the outer corner or like under the eye right here in the triangle zone. Next up is the eye smudge and point brush. Both ends are basically pencil brushes. One is just a little bit more, just a little bit bigger, and the other end is just like a really small little pencil brush. This one I like to use to pack on like the center highlight shades. And this end I like to use for right here. It's a really great size for the triangle zone. Oh, and also the inner corner highlight. If you like to do that, I like to do that. Actually, my makeup today is super simple. I just went to the salon today, so I didn't really wear that much makeup out. Yeah, occasionally I do use this. I actually find this blends shadow much better than the other actual blending brush. It is a little bit more dense though, so it's more like if you like to apply eyeshadow in a very sculptural way, but you don't want that super harsh edge, but you don't want to blend it out to like a smoky sort of look either. So it's like a good brush for that, to kind of blend out a super harsh line just to soften it but still have that sort of defined line. Does that make sense? I don't really have much to say about this brush. It's not a bad brush. I like to use it for certain things. We have the eyeshadow and liner brush. This was supposed to be like, I guess, the eyeshadow placement brush. I don't like this brush. I hate it. Not that it's a bad brush, but I guess if you're Korean or you have like a monolid in general, your eye area, because for me, I have really big eyes, so of course I'm gonna want to use a big eyeshadow placement brush to like really get the base shadow everywhere. But this one, really, I just use it for maybe shimmer, like in the center of the lid. And that's pretty much all I use it, because if I use this for my base shadow, it will take forever. Like I would be sitting there packing and blending, and it's just too long. To show you in comparison, the kind of shadow brush I use to apply my base is this one right here. It's the Picasso 205A. Favorite brush. I love to use it for setting under the eyes as well, because it's like the perfect size around the nose. But it makes putting on my eyeshadow base so much quicker and easier. You can see the size difference. And so I don't really ever use this brush at all. To be honest, I wish these two brushes were together on like opposite ends. The other sides I don't really ever use. The other side of this brush is the liner brush. I guess it's meant for like gel liner to kind of give, it's really short and really stiff, and it's super thin. It's like you get like a really, you can get a really sharp line with it. You know, if you use gel liner, it's great for that. I don't use gel liner anymore, so I like to use it for getting eyeliner with eyeshadow, so it's good for that. I do use it for that. And then next up is probably the brush I use the most from the eye brushes is EO4 dual eyebrow brush. One end is a sharp angled brush for using with like brow powders, and the other end is just a spoolie, just to brush out your brow hairs and to blend out the eyeshadow, not brow shadow. And really, you can also use this for liner as well. I use this like every day because I have been really into just using powder to fill in my brows. So yeah, I like this brush. And then last but not least, we have the lip brush. This is L01, so this is numbered differently. And it's one of the retractable ones. It's one of those flat pointed Fuji lip brushes. So yeah, I mean, I never really use this at all because I just don't find the need to. If you're a makeup artist, maybe you'll like it, but it's a good shade for getting like right in the inner corners. To blend out my lipstick because she's getting crusty. You can get a really precise line if you're the type of person that likes to get like a full lip application. I feel like square lip brushes, like this shape, are probably better for that. Like this, getting that sharp line, but this is fine. I just never ever reach for this just because I never use lip brushes to begin with. But it's not bad, it's just not useful to me. And actually, while we're on the topic of 3CE tools, they have new sponges. You get 3 of these large diamond wedge puffs. You get 5 or 4 of these house-shaped pentagon sponges. And then you get 3, no, you get, you know what's wrong with me? You get 6 of these triangle ones. Now, it's the kind of latex sponge that doesn't absorb water really. Yeah, you can wet it, but it doesn't grow or anything. This is just your standard generic triangle sponge you can use to, all these have the same function. It just comes down to the shape. You can use this one kind of like for your daily. There's 7 sides. You can actually use one for every day of the week. Use one side to blend all your liquid products out, and then the next day switch sides. My favorite is actually this one. It just makes getting on foundation and all that on super quick. I just slap foundation all over the face and kind of just like, or if I'm using like whitening products like Mebec cream or like a sort of primer, I just like slap it everywhere and kind of use this to blend everything out, and it's fantastic. This has been like my thing lately. I just am like obsessed with this one. All right, so now that I reviewed all the brushes, the ones that I recommend. Face brushes, if you use liquid foundation, I probably recommend the sponges, to be honest. This one I really only recommend if you like to use cream foundation. I love the powder brush. It's a great size for powder, so I like to use it. I've been using this almost every day. But amongst like the contour, highlight, blush brush, whatevers, probably this one, because honestly, it can replace any of these brushes, to be honest with you. This one brush. Like I was saying earlier when I was talking about this brush specifically, it covers all the bases. So really, I recommend this one. Everything else is just okay. If you're like a fanatic of 3CE and just want to collect everything, go right ahead. I do recommend having a brush cleaner though, something like this, especially if you're gonna be using one brush for multiple products. Using this to like take off any excess product so that you don't like dip and mix between powders. Concealer brush, I definitely recommend. It definitely helps you get the right amount of concealer on there. Lets you apply it thinly and blend it out. If you use eyeshadows or powder to fill in your brows, I highly recommend the brow brush. Everything else? Because the thing is, the brushes that I would recommend from the eye brushes, it's like the other side I wouldn't recommend at all. So it's kind of like a waste of money. I wish they had like these certain brushes that I do like separately without having like the dual-endedness. Like this brush, I like this end, the angled end. And if actually looking at it now, that's really the only brush that I like from this eyeshadow collection. This one is fine if you're really into applying shimmers and highlights to your eyes. This is a good brush to have, the number 2 smudge and point brush. Everything else, I always reach for other brushes to use instead of these. So my top picks, the multi-brush, the concealer brush, the brow brush, and the eye smudge and point brush. Oh, and also the puffs, the sponges. I really recommend these just for this one really. You can wash this so you can use it multiple times. I'd imagine if you're a cushion user, you're probably gonna already have a puff in there to be, this is the new Believely Aura Honey Glow Cushion, by the way. Fantastic cushion, amazing glow. Oh, by the way, I'm using this for foundation day. Yeah, you're probably already gonna have this, so you don't really need a foundation brush. So yeah, I hope you found that video helpful. It was supposed to be a really quick and simple one, but it turned out to be like this long mess. I guess I'll see you guys in the next video.